Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of zCarth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. This episode is the semifinals for the second group within the current Grand Arena Championships that I've been playing in. With the new matchmaking system in place, I've had to face a lot of really hard rosters. I haven't really had a break in any of my matches, this one included. Now, I said at the very start of this series that I would show all of my matches, win or lose, and whereas I'm not going to reveal whether I won or lost this particular match, I will say that there was a fair amount of fail on my end. This particular match was one of the most even matches that I've had so far in Grand Arena, which means there really wasn't much to say in terms of who had the advantage over who. With things so close in terms of on-paper advantage, it would come down to whoever was the best at executing in this particular matchup. When I first opened the Grand Arena map, I saw that my opponent had already cleared 3 of my zones. I'll discuss later just how efficiently my opponent was able to clear my zones, but suffice it to say that they left a little wiggle room in the match so that I would be able to try a couple of the squads that I had previously not been able to try just because I wanted to keep an advantage in banners. I keep seeing my opponents put Darth Revan down on defense, and I can't help but wonder what they would do if I had put my own Darth Revan on. Would they be able to beat my Darth Revan with something like Padme or General Grievous? Almost all of them actually put General Grievous down on defense as well, so I have to think that maybe it would be a standoff with one of our zones just completely inaccessible to the other player. You'll see that at the start of the match, I was able to use Revan's speed advantage to put the fear of God into the entire opponent team. Whereas my arena is slowly starting to adopt use of the Marauder, I really haven't had a lot of experience playing against it, and so I'm still a little afraid of it and uncertain on how to act against it. Generally, I try to target them first, just so I don't have to deal with whatever shenanigans the Marauder can get up to. I do have to question why my opponents aren't using Darth Revan on offense instead of defense, just because Grand Arena favors full clears as opposed to getting defensive wins. In fact, you don't get anything for defensive wins, and if your opponent fails to clear you, you really don't gain anything from it at all. We're all racing to get the highest score possible. We're not really trying to negate points on other players just because it really doesn't gain us anything if we sabotage one individual player. There are still thousands of other players to compete against that we're never going to have an ability to impact in any way. Generally speaking, we want to be able to full clear every single match no matter what, just because of how many banners that gets us. Even when we lose, we're still getting around 2,000 total banners for the match. If you think of every match as something where you can gain 3,000 total Grand Arena points or banners or whatever you want to call them, really, winning only gets you 1/3 of that. The other 2/3 is between defense and offense, and I guess a little bit on the feats, which I don't really have a comment about so far. Alright, so back to the present. I chose Jedi Training Rey against this Kira team because the Kira team clearly had no offensive units at all. Jedi Training Rey can do an immense amount of damage to units as long as they have time and as long as their own guys survive. This particular Kira squad didn't have any squad members who would be able to do much damage. In fact, Kira was probably going to be the one who did the most damage, unless it was Vander Chewbacca. The squad can kind of be like whack-a-mole, however, as you can see that Captain Han Solo just revived Vander Chewbacca, and if I didn't take care of Vander Chewbacca pretty soon, he would be able to start reviving people as well. Taking those two on first is probably the key to success against this squad, and once both of them are gone, it's really only a matter of time before you can take all of the members out. The only drawback to using Jedi Training Rey against a squad that I'm not extremely familiar with is that I inevitably am going to lose banners. Scavenger Rey and Resistance Trooper are both so fragile that they really take a lot of damage if someone breathes on them at all. And the percentage of protection that we regain from BB-8 and his Illuminated Destiny doesn't really do enough to offset that. That being said, going into this match, I knew I had some wiggle room, and I wasn't really afraid of missing a banner here or there. What I really wanted to do was make sure that I got first-time wins against all of the opponent's squads. We'll see in a minute just how well that strategy panned out for me. Unbeknownst to you, but knownst to me, right before this Grand Arena, I was able to put a Zeta on both Kanan and Sabine in the hopes that I'd be able to use the Phoenix squad as a counter to the Old Republic team. And this was my great opportunity to be able to face said Old Republic team with Phoenix. I went with Chopper here instead of Ezra because I've heard that he's really good at regenerating health, and I wanted to see if I could do it without Ezra. Perhaps that was foolish, since Ezra has a Zeta and is fully geared, but I just wanted to see what would happen. I've chopped the end off of this video, as well as sped up the total speed of it, just because I don't really think it's going to do much in order to educate anyone. I think I need a little more work on my Phoenix, because, as you can probably see, almost every attempt to put days on Zalbar has met in failure of one way or another. Granted, Zalbar has incredibly high tenacity on this particular build, but I should still be able to put daze on him when I want. I say that even as he's dazed, but I believe this was the only time in the entire match, and it went the full 5 minutes, that he ever got dazed. None of our characters died at all, and therefore I'm cutting this video short as a failed attempt, and honestly, probably a bad experiment, considering I didn't know what else my opponent had in the back zones yet. Please do keep in mind that Phoenix is a viable counter to Old Republic in other circumstances, but I need at least one more Zeta for the squad to work, and maybe I should be using Ezra as well. Or maybe I just need more speed on my characters, more potency on Zeb. I really don't know. I've invested so much into this Phoenix squad just for ships that I would really like to get the squad up and functional in order to have another weapon at my disposal in Grand Arena, but I guess we'll see what happens. I really should also remod that Phoenix squad. They're okay modded, but my opponent's Old Republic team was excellently modded, and that really does make a difference at this level of play. I really needed more information here, and because I hadn't been able to take out the Old Republic team on the cheap with Phoenix, I decided I would take First Order into this zMaul team, despite my lack of experience against it, just because I know First Order can take on almost any squad that isn't fully in the meta. First Order is a turn meter train team, which means they rely on things like not getting stunned, not getting dazed, and not getting ability blocked in order to continue the TM train and get more turns than their opponent. With that in mind, I was a little bit shaken by the fact that Maul got daze on every single one of my characters to start the bout, and that a lot of the other characters, like Dooku, were able to stun things. That isn't to say that it really surprised me exactly, but I did go into this match without thinking it all the way through. I'm not one to make excuses, and I fully own all the actions that I took in this match and others, but I will say one other thing about this. I had just finished with a 5-hour drive in traffic with a screaming infant in the back seat, and my head wasn't all the way in the game. I had to be up by 4 a.m. in the morning to go to the airport for the second leg of my vacation, and as such, I was really kind of rushed and wanted to just get done with this. I didn't think all of my matches through, and as you can probably tell already, that's taking a toll on my decision-making process. I'm truly not trying to make excuses here. I'm really trying to make a point. Planning is really, really important in Grand Arena. Being able to make good decisions, not only about what matchups you want to make, but about how to win those matchups with the best banner count possible, is extremely important for this game mode. I had finally broken through one of my opponent's zones, which is awesome. I would be able to tell what kind of squads I could prepare for, and be able to hold 2 squads in reserve for the remaining zone that I didn't know about. The back zone here was kind of a mixed bag. I really didn't have much experience against the Geonosians, but I have about 1,000,000 experience against the Ewoks, and I knew exactly the team that could take them out. I did decide to hold troopers in reserve just in case, which I think is a good move on my end. Just in case troopers were needed in another circumstance. Not that I really know what circumstance that would be, but it's always wise to operate with the full amount of information that you have, and I at least had enough information to know that I could probably use bounty hunters in this matchup and be able to beat whatever was in the back zone of my opponents here. This was my first time trying Bossk against zCarth. I'd heard earlier that one of my colleagues was able to beat the Carth team using Bossk bounty hunters, and I really hoped that that would be true. I'm not really sure why I hadn't experimented with this matchup before, but I found that Carth died really easily to an Embo thrown hat, which, as I've said before, is probably one of the most fun moves in the game. And after that, it was really all about controlling the board and reducing how much damage was done to me. Honestly, bounty hunters are so versatile, guys. I don't see why people put them on defense. There are only a couple bad matchups for them, and they even take on squads like Night Sisters in the meta matchups. Oh, and I should add, they also take on most Traya teams, though Traya is so depended on in the current state of Grand Arena that we'll never probably see a good player use Traya on defense for a long time. Now, if you're a good player and use Traya on defense, I would be really interested to know how you tackle all of the different things that Traya does counter. In this and almost every single matchup against Old Republic, you're going to want to take out Carth first because of how weak he is and how susceptible he is to almost any kind of damage, followed by taking on Canderous because he's really the engine behind which the Old Republic team drives. The Mission Zalbar combo is a potent one in a lot of circumstances, but they don't really do that much damage if you can contain Zalbar or his taunt or his retribution or whatever. And most squads at this point can, at least the squads that I favor that use control rather than brute force. Honestly, at this point in the fight, all I could really think about, besides trying to get max banners, was how disappointing Juhani is for that squad. Reading her kit, I just had always felt like she was going to be a lot stronger than she actually was. I haven't seen her in any squad that I actually liked, and honestly, she made things easier in most of the matchups I've seen. A tank that drops its taunt the first time that it loses protection really isn't worth much, in my opinion. That said, I did gear 12 her, so I guess I should probably use her, which is probably kind of a stupid statement to make. Alright, my opponent had the same back zone as my previous round opponent. They had put General Grievous with gear 13 in there, as well as a super duper duper fast bounty hunter team under Django lead, which is probably the best way to run them on defense if you're going to run bounty hunters on defense. I decided to try a tactic that had worked decently well for me last time and use Traya to counter General Grievous. I knew that the Traya squad would probably not be able to withstand the crazy damage that Grievous could do, but I hoped that I would be able to at least execute, or rather annihilate with Nihilus at least once, and be able to take out B1 in the process just because B1 assists every single attack, and Traya takes off 8 of his little counters each time. That part was probably going to be easy. Going into this fight, I noticed that my opponent had Newt here instead of Droidica, which was really going to cause some problems. Right away, I noticed that my opponent's offense was off the charts. It was even crazier than in my last round when my opponent was able to kill all of my guys before I killed even 3 of their models. The fact that I lost Shore Trooper and Thrawn so incredibly quickly from the very start, and then was almost immediately one-shot by Grievous against Scion, meant that I was probably sunk. Traya almost always lives longer than this, but really, I'm not sure what I could have done in this match. I'm kind of thinking that Traya is done, for now at least, as a potential offensive counter against General Grievous just because of how fast they died. I'd be very interested to know if Gear 13 Sith Triumvirate would be able to counter the Grievous squad or not, but at Gear 12, I'm firmly convinced now that Traya is really not the way to go. What is the way to go? I'm really not sure. The thing I really am sure about is that destroying Ewoks with Imperial troopers is a lot of fun, and it's really not challenging at all, assuming you have a faster Stark than Paplu. One really sneaky thing that a lot of players will do is stack a lot of speed on Paplu, just because he has plus 25% speed when he doesn't have a buff, which means he's a lot faster than a lot of people notice on paper. And because people don't really pay attention to Ewoks or know their stats very well, they assume that they're going to be faster than Ewoks. That being said, my Stark is really, really fast, and almost no Ewok team is really going to be able to match his speed. I did check first, though, and my opponent's Paplu was at 250 speed, which is faster than some Starks at least. Alright, so this is where the wheels started to fall off a little bit here. I started making some poor decisions based on my lack of knowledge, which is never a good excuse. I made a good decision in the sense that I prioritized the back zone that had all the Geonosians in it, because I knew that I needed to get the zone's points in order to beat my opponent. Looking at Padme's kit, I was convinced, without doing any kind of research, that Padme was going to have an overwhelming advantage against all Geonosians, simply on the merit of her being able to give a ton of stacks of protection to her squad throughout the match because of all of the out-of-activation hits the Geonosians cause on them. In addition, because of all these stacks of extra protection I would be getting, she would also be giving a massive amount of courage to her teammates, which relies on percentage of health-based attacks, which in turn really destroys the Geonosians because of how they share all of their health and protection. I'm actually convinced that the theory of this attack was sound. Where I really made a big mistake was in my greed to get more banners and or get more attacks with an understrength squad under my belt for the Grand Arena feat that we had. What I discovered is that whereas the Padme team did survive incredibly well against all the Geonosians, they very rarely converted all those stacks of protection up into courage, which in turn was almost never used against the Geonosians except against the Brood Alpha, or rather against the Brute, who was the only member of the squad who was able to respawn. I'm not going to show the full clip because really it's all the same thing. Just please keep in mind that I was able to finally, with 5 seconds left, kill the Geonosian soldier, and so I kept the turn meter loaded on the Geonosians and decided that I had to go all out on offense against them. I took Jedi Revan, and this time I decided not to underestimate them at all. One huge fail I feel like I made in the last match was the fact that I was targeting the Geonosian soldier, and whereas he does have pretty low hit points, the Geonosian Brood Alpha is really the one to take down. If I could have one-shot the Brood Alpha, this squad would have crumbled to dust against almost any of my remaining B squads to be able to take him out, and I could have used Jedi Revan to be able to take out either the Bounty Hunter team or the Grievous squad. I really wish I knew what would have happened if I had taken the full Padme squad instead of trying to get fancy and using an understrength squad against a squad I really didn't know that much about. Because of that huge error, I was left with having to use my one trump card team to be able to take out that zone and maybe be able to secure a win. Make no mistake here though, using Jedi Revan in this zone meant I would not be able to get a full clear this Grand Arena, which would mean I would be open to my opponent being able to full clear me and take the win. I had absolutely 0 squads remaining to be able to take out either the Grievous squad or the Bounty Hunter squad. In fact, I knew I wouldn't be able to take out the Bounty Hunter squad simply because I hadn't left any of my good squads to be able to counter them. I did feel like I had an outside chance to be able to drag the Grievous squad down screaming with a million little paper cuts, and so I decided to start sending teams in to be able to take out one guy at a time and slowly whittle down Grievous's squad. I've sped up all these attacks to the maximum just because I doubt you really care about me taking scrubs against a General Grievous squad and slowly being destroyed and dismantled by Grievous every single time. One really kind of glaring weakness that I've identified in my gameplay is that I really don't use Emperor Palpatine and his squad very often. He doesn't seem to do very well on defense, and every time I use him on offense, it seems like either he's barely winning matches that he really shouldn't lose ever, or I just don't use him because I have better options. I realize that that really isn't good, but I'm kind of stuck with it, so if anyone has suggestions, please feel free to drop them. I was actually finding a little bit of success against this Grievous squad, but I kind of made a mistake here and let Tarkin kill Newt, which in turn just revived Newt and spelled my defeat. I don't know that I would have won if I hadn't killed Newt, but I didn't really give myself the best chance. If you watched my last episode, I used this Rogue One composition with Cad Bane to be able to take down General Grievous at the end. It's kind of a fun squad to use, to be honest, and I really like the idea of them being my General Grievous finishers. But this General Grievous was something else, and Newt was kind of invulnerable here. Being able to stealth himself after I kill him once meant I would have to kill him twice, and be able to dispel his stealth after the first time I killed him. That was really probably beyond what any of my other squads could do, though looking at it, I think I had enough squads that I probably should have tried that more often. As it stands, Newt was able to put extortion on all my guys and cause enough disruption that I couldn't focus fire on General Grievous enough to be able to get the win. And so, my attempt to assassinate General Grievous had failed, and I was stuck in an impasse with my opponent with a slim margin of banners to my name. This was especially terrifying because one of my squads remaining was my Rex Wampa team, which really doesn't hold very well, and the other team was Commander Luke, which has never really gotten a defense. Luckily for me, I was able to pull out the win. My opponent had lost steam against my Night Sisters and my General Grievous squad up front, and had, luckily for me, had to use a lot of teams that they probably could have used to clear my Rex Wampa team in the back, as well as my Commander Luke team. After chatting some with my opponent, who was extremely amicable and is probably going to be watching this video, I was told that they had used their Night Sister squad on my Night Sister squad, and I was able to get a defense with it, and that they had used the similar Zerg mentality to take on General Grievous the way I was trying to take on General Grievous, but had done, obviously, a worse job than they had. Not getting the full clear really stung, but being able to be in the top 100 of the Chromium League was kind of a good compensation at least. So here's what I could have done if I wanted to win this match. I could have used Traya and Scion to take out the Geos, use random teams to whittle down General Grievous like I had been doing, use Emperor Palpatine and Nihilus to finish off General Grievous, and then use Jedi Revan to finish off the Bounty Hunter squad for the full clear. But I didn't do it, and that was on me. I still ended up getting the win against my opponent, which is awesome, because it keeps me in contention to get into the final Kyber Leagues. But really, I could have done a lot better. Here's hoping I'm able to perform better for you guys in the future. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Z'Areth prevails.